explaining conduction. According to this theory, we are talking about energy levels. So you have the valency shell. So suppose this is the valency shell. Now the valency shell has a small bandwidth. Okay. Now there is something above the valency shell which is called the conduction band. As long as an electron is in the valency shell, though loose, it is still tied to a particular. Atom. But there is something beyond that which we will call the conduction band, where all the electrons, they are basically, you have heard of metallic bonds. So once metallic bonds are formed, those outermost electrons are all free, and those outermost electrons, they are all wandering in the conduction band. Now in conductors, there is an overlap between the conduction band and valency band. As a result, the electrons easily jump from the valency band to the conduction band. So in conductors, the electrons easily jump from valency band to conduction band. Okay, now this is in conductors, because there is an overlap between them. Even because of thermal energy, it can just go to the conduction band. Now as you keep lowering temperatures, it can't. So at very low temperatures, it will not conduct. Okay. Then I have insulators. In insulators, there is a significant band gap. This band gap is of the order of 3 electron volt. That means to take electron from here and to put it there. To take an electron from here and put it there, it will take 3 volt of potential difference. Okay, so it is more than 3 volt. It need not be just 3 volt, it is more than 3 volt. The definition of an insulator is any material where the band gap is more than 3 volt is an insulator. Okay, so here what happens is when you increase the temperature, electrons will move from the conduction band to from the valency band to the conduction band. So electrons move from valency band to conduction band. Yeah, so the n value increases, but still n is low. N is not very high, but n is still not as like 10 power minus 3, 10 power minus 4, or 10 power minus 10 like that. So n is still low. In this case, there is no significant impact on tau. But here what happens is that as temperature increases, there is no impact on n, but there is an impact on tau. Yeah. So based on this, we said that metals have a positive thermal coefficient. Metals have a positive thermal coefficient of resistance, while insulators and semiconductors have negative thermal coefficient. Negative thermal coefficient means as temperature increases, resistance decreases. Positive thermal coefficient means as temperature increases, resistance increases. Yeah, so this is one thing. So what happens is, metal, it looks like this. For a conductor, it looks like this. This is R, this is a temperature. For an insulator, it looks like this. There is no rule that it has to be a straight line. It is just a negative sloped line. It could be a straight line, no problem. Okay, so this is how conductors behave. This is how insulators behave. Then I explained to you a question. I explained to you that the resistance at any temperature is resistance at 0 into 1 plus alpha delta T. This is a formula that you need to remember. What they will do is they'll give you the value for R0 They'll give you alpha, they'll give you delta T and ask you to find R. So this is a direct formula substitution, RT. Okay, they'll ask you to find out what is the definition of alpha. Alpha is equal to, see, RT is equal to R0 plus R0 alpha delta T. So RT minus R0 by R0 into delta T is equal to alpha. So alpha is the thermal coefficient. What is this RT minus R0? Can I say it is the change in resistance by R0? So per unit resistance by delta T per degree rise in temperature. So alpha is the change in resistance per unit resistance per degree rise in temperature. So alpha is called the thermal coefficient of resistance. If you can make a note, we'll carry on. RT is equal to R0 into 1 plus alpha delta T. R0 is the resistance at 0 degrees centigrade. This is purely experimental. So somebody conducted experiments and then he found out. Then I given you the logic for that. So RT is equal to R0 plus, so this is how the resistivity also changes. Rho T is equal to rho 0 plus rho 0 into alpha into delta T. Okay, this is rho T. This is rho T and this is RT. So the thermal coefficient of resistance is the change in resistance per unit resistance per degree rise in temperature. Please understand this has nothing to do with the alpha value, that is the increase in length, change in length per unit length per degree rise in temperature. This has nothing to do with that. This is a constant for a given material. Similarly, N is a constant for a given material. Tau is a constant for a given material. This is not only constant for a given material, this is constant for a given material at a given temperature. So as temperature changes, these values also change. But I explained to you, in some cases it is significant, in some cases it is not significant. Okay, so I hope you are able to understand this. If you understand this, then let's move on. Next, we will look at the experimental verification of Ohm's law. Experimental verification of Ohm's law. So basically, Ohm is a scientist who suggested a law which says V is equal to I into R. This is a experiment that you will also be doing in your lab. So very important, and you get questions from here quite frequently. Okay, so what way Ohm did is he took a resistor and connected it to a potential source. Okay, and he connected it to a variable potential source. And then he measured the current in the circuit. What he did is he kept changing the V value. He kept changing the V value. Then he saw that as the V value changes, the I value also changes. Okay, so when V was 0, I was 0. Now as V value is increased, the I value also increases. So he saw that the plot lies on a straight line. So when it lies on a straight line, he said that look, V seems to be proportional to I. So he said that I is proportional to V by a constant, or V is equal to I into R, where R is a constant. What he did is, this graph is a little difficult for us to understand, but if we have I on the x-axis, V on the y-axis, then this is very simple to understand. But this is the experiment that he conducted. For him, the dependent variable was I. The independent variable is V. Always independent variable on x-axis, dependent variable on the y-axis. So this is the right thing, but this is what is more convenient for us. So we want to understand this. So he saw that the slope of this, which is equal to dV by di, is a constant. So from there he said V is proportional to I, and V is equal to I into R, where R is the resistance of the body. So this is what we do experimentally. So the way we do experimentally is we change the values of V for a given R value. We find out what is the current and we plot the graph. We see that the graph is a straight line. Okay, can you please work on it? This is the circuit diagram. This is a device which measures current, which is called ammeter. Then there is a device which will measure the potential difference. We can measure it across here also. So that is called a voltmeter. So he took the observation of the voltmeter, he took the observation of the ammeter and plotted a graph. When he plotted the graph, he saw that the graph was a straight line. From there, he said V is proportional to I, or V is equal to I into R, where R is the resistance. Okay. The kind of question that you will get in your board exam is this. They will give you two graphs like this, A and B. They'll ask you in which case is the resistance high. Okay, so I have not told you what is there on the x-axis and y-axis. If V is here, I is here, the slope is equal to R. So here the slope is less, here the slope is greater. So slope is greater means resistance will be greater. Okay, here slope is less. Slope is less means resistance will be less. For a given potential, here the current is much higher than here. So if V is equal to I into R, so V is high, I is high. So if I is high, R will be low. So here R will be low, here R will be high. On the other hand, if I have a graph where I have V here and I here, now it becomes different. Now you see I is equal to V by R. Okay, so now in this case, the resistance is low, and in this case, the resistance is high. Here, the resistance is high, and here in this case, the R is low. So we need to find out. So Ohm's law is V is equal to IR, or V is directly proportional to I, and there is a linear relationship. There is a linear relationship. So this is what is referred to as Ohm's law, and a conductor which follows Ohm's law is called an ohmic conductor. A conductor which follows Ohm's law is an ohmic conductor. Or a resistor which follows Ohm's law is called an ohmic resistor. That means there are ohmic resistors and non-ohmic resistors. Whenever the V versus I graph is a straight line, it's an ohmic resistor. Whenever the V versus I graph is not a straight line, it is not an ohmic resistor. So these are not ohmic resistors. This is an ohmic resistor. Okay, now in an ohmic resistor, if suppose this is a resistance, this is A here, B here, the way you connect it doesn't matter. That means what? If I have a circuit here, whether you connect A here, B here, or whether you connect A here and B here, it doesn't matter. Okay, but in case of non-ohmic resistors, it makes a difference. Say for example, a diode. A diode is an example of a non-ohmic resistor. A diode is an example of a non-ohmic resistor. A diode is an example of a non-ohmic resistor because it matters. How you connect a diode matters. So the V versus I graph for a diode looks like this. So when I connect it in reverse, it is different. So this is an example of a non-ohmic resistor. Ohmic resistor, always V versus I graph is going to look like a straight line. A simple resistor made up of nichrome is an example of an ohmic resistor. So you have ohmic resistor, non-ohmic resistor. They'll ask you to differentiate between ohmic resistor and non-ohmic resistor. So it is all there in the graph. In an ohmic resistor, the V versus I graph is a straight line. In a non-ohmic resistor, the V versus I graph will not be a straight line. It could be decreasing, it could be increasing with a curved line. So diodes are examples. All semiconductors are examples of non-ohmic resistors. All semiconductors are examples of non-ohmic resistors. All semiconductors are examples of non-ohmic resistors. So in a non-ohmic resistor, the V versus I graph is not a straight line. In a non-ohmic resistor, mostly the way you connect the resistor influences the current. Say for example here. So if you connect it in one way, this is how the current increases. This is I here, this is V here. If you connect it, sorry, this is V here and this is I here. If you connect it the opposite way, again there's a difference in current. But in case of an ohmic resistor, whichever way you connect, it's the same. Okay, so you have ohmic resistors and you have non-ohmic resistors. If you can make some notes, we will move on. So you have ohmic resistors, you have non-ohmic resistors. Here I was explaining to you how the V versus I graph is. Here I explained to you how the V versus I graph for a non-ohmic resistor is. The V versus I graph, even for an ohmic resistor, the V versus I graph for an ohmic resistor is like this, but then after some time it starts bending. So it becomes non-ohmic for high currents. Can you think of a reason why it is like this? Why does it become curved? So basically in the initial part, basically whenever you have a resistance, suppose you have a resistance and a current passes through it, the resistor gets heated up. Whenever you have a current passing through it, the resistor gets heated up. So when the resistor gets heated up, then what happens? I already told you RT is equal to R0 into 1 plus alpha into delta T. So the resistance goes up. So once the resistance goes up, then it's actually a variable. So when the resistance goes up, the V is equal to I into R. This R value is no more a constant. So here the heating effects of current starts coming in, and because of the heating effect of current, this becomes a curved line. So because of that, we say it is a non-ohmic resistor. So an example of non-ohmic resistor, all semiconductors, all diodes, all transistors are examples of non-ohmic resistors. Apart from that, ohmic resistors for high voltage or high current, they also behave like non-ohmic resistor. That is, the V versus I graph is not a straight line. Can you make some notes? Okay. So if you get it, then we can move on. So what have we seen till now? We have seen till now what happens when a potential difference is applied across a conductor. 2, I explained to you, or I derived Ohm's law. I derived Ohm's law. Then I explained to you about N and tau and resistivity. Then we understood about the temperature dependence on resistance. That is, how does the resistance depend upon temperature? Yeah, so we learned that. Then again, we did the experimental verification. Verification of Ohm's law. Yeah, then I explained to you ohmic and non-ohmic conductors. Then I explained to you conductors, insulators, and semiconductors in terms of band theory. Yeah, so we have done quite a bit of theory here. Now I am ready to move ahead and take over the next part of it. Before I move, I just want to see, since there is no message, I'm very happy and I can move on. Okay, so if you understand this, great. We have to next read something called as Kirchhoff's law. You can also call him Kirchhoff's law so that you don't make any mistakes. You can also call him Kirchhoff's law so that you don't make any mistake in the spelling. So we are going to learn two very important laws which are called Kirchhoff's law or Kirchhoff's law or Kirchhoff's law. I like to call it Kirchhoff's law so that I don't make any mistake in the spellings. Okay. Now Kirchhoff's first law is that in case of any junction, okay, in case of any junction, this is a junction. A junction is a point where 3 or more wires meet. A junction is a point where 3 or more wires meet. Okay, a junction is a point where 3 or more wires meet, and the current approaching a junction is equal to the current leaving a junction. So according to his first rule, Kirchhoff's first law, also referred to as the junction rule. Junction rule tells me that the current approaching a junction is equal to the net current leaving the junction. The current approaching a junction is equal to the current leaving a junction. So if this is I1 here, if this is I2 here, you have I1 plus I2 here. So I3, the current through this wire has to be I1 plus I2. The current leaving a junction is equal to, or current approaching a junction is equal to the current leaving a junction. This is because the basic fundamental theory behind this is charge is not created nor destroyed, and as current flows, there is no accumulation. As current flows, there is no accumulation. Only because there is no accumulation, whatever charge is going in, rate of charge inflow is equal to the rate of charge outflow. So the logic behind the first law is the law of conservation of charge. Law of conservation of charge. Okay, so this is the first law, very simple law. Current approaching a junction is equal to current leaving a junction. These Kirchhoff's laws are very, very important. Every second year they will come in your exam. So if this year it is not there, I can't remember this year, but if this year it is not there, next year for you it will come. If it was there this year, still next year it may come. Okay, so this is Kirchhoff's first law. According to Kirchhoff's first law, the current approaching a junction is equal to the current leaving a junction. What is a junction? A junction is a point where 3 or more wires meet. This is not a junction. This is not a junction. This is not a junction. Only if there is another wire here, only if there is another wire here, there is a junction. Okay. So if you understand this, then we go to Kirchhoff's second law. Okay, so now let's understand this a little better. First, let's focus a little. Let's talk about it a little, and then let's move on. See, suppose this is a conductor. See, now we won't talk about conductors. We'll talk about resistors because we are more interested in the resistance which a conductor is offering. Okay, this is also referred to as the loop law. So this is a resistor. So when you put a potential difference here, what happens is the current flows through this. Now you know current flows from high potential to low potential. So this is positive, this is negative. So this will be high potential, this will be low potential. So we have to realize that when a current passes through a resistor, there is the loss in potential. See, potential is like a mountain. Okay, so when you're there at the top of the mountain, your potential is high. When you're coming down, you will be coming down. You may not go down directly. You may come to a in-between spot. So you have gone from high potential to low potential. So when you go from high potential to low potential, you lose potential. And you lose potential means you lose energy. So in the direction of the current, so whenever you take current, current goes from high potential to low potential. So in the direction of current, there will definitely be loss of energy or loss in potential. That loss in potential V is equal to I into R. That's what Ohm told us. That loss in potential is equal to I into R. So this is a small concept that you all have to understand. Okay. Yeah. Then suppose I'm traveling like this. I go from negative to positive terminal. So when I go from negative to positive terminal, you see I'm going from low potential to high potential. Then what will be happening? I'll be gaining potential. When we move from low potential to high potential, we gain energy or potential. See, potential is energy per unit charge. So if you tell me how much charge, I can tell you how much energy, not a big deal. So it's enough if we remember it as potential. So when you go from high potential to low potential, in the direction of current, when you go through a resistor, there is a drop in potential. On the other hand, when we move from low potential to high potential, when you go opposite to the direction of current, then you are gaining potential. Okay. Similarly, when you move from the negative terminal of a battery to the positive terminal of a battery, you are gaining potential. But when you go from positive to negative, you are losing potential. Okay. So when we move from positive to negative, when we move from positive to negative of a battery, we lose potential. Now when we move from negative to positive, we gain potential. Okay, so this small aspect, all of you must be able to understand what it means. Okay, so if you have made notes of, we have still not reached second law. Okay, I have not even started second law. Okay, now I will start second law. I'll go to a new page. Yeah, so here there is a circuit. This is suppose R1. This is R2. This is R3. This is V1, V2. Suppose V2 is greater than V1. Suppose V2 is greater than V1. So this battery will be driving the current. So there will be current like this, there will be current like this, there will be current like this, there will be current like this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. Remember, nowhere are charges generated. So if some I current leaves the battery, what will be the current entering the battery? Also I. Otherwise, what will happen? Otherwise, the battery will be generating charges, which is not possible. Okay. So here we are coming up with the rule: current leaving a battery or cell equals current entering the battery. What is the logic behind this? Law of conservation of charge. So I current goes, I current goes, I current goes. Okay. Suppose I am at this point, Suppose I am at this point, suppose I am a charge Q. Okay. Now you see here, I am going to lose energy. How much energy will I lose? Q into I into R. Then here also I lose energy. How much energy will I lose? I into R2. Here I'm going from positive to negative. So positive to negative means what? I'm going from high to low. So if I'm going from high to low, what will happen? Again, I lose energy. So I will lose energy. Then again, I'm going here. So plus I into R3. So this is the total energy that I have lost. Because I have lost, I'll put a negative sign. Now when I'm going from negative to positive, I'm going to gain energy. So I'm going to gain plus Q into V2. And I've reached my point. If I've reached my starting point, there is, you know, that potential energy depends only on starting and the ending point. If the starting and ending points are the same, then there will be no change in potential energy. So this will be equal to 0. Yeah, this will be equal to 0. So the Q here and the Q here can get cancelled, and I have a equation like this, that V2 minus IR1 plus IR2 plus IR3 plus V1 is equal to 0, which means that in any closed circuit, in a closed circuit, only in a closed circuit you can start from a point and come back to the same point. So in a closed circuit, the sum of gain in potential and the loss in potential is equal to 0. What sum? It's an algebraic sum. That means you are putting appropriate signs. In a closed loop, the algebraic, ALGEBRIAIC or IAC, anyway, algebraic sum of loss in potential and gain in potential is 0. In a closed loop, the algebraic sum of the loss in potential and gain in potential is equal to 0. That means there are some elements in the circuit where I am losing potential, some elements where I am gaining potential, but because I am at one point, I am at the same point, there is no total loss or gain. So the net loss must be equal to net gain, and this is coming from the law of conservation of energy. That means in a closed loop, your energy is a constant. So you have if you go in a closed loop, your energy is a constant. So if you have lost energy at some points, you have gained energy at some points, and the loss must be equal to the gain. Suppose you are there at a peak of at the top of a mountain. You come like this, and then you go up to the same height. Then you have lost energy potential at some points, and you have gained potential at some points. Because you are at the same height, your potential is the same. So the loss must be equal to the gain. So that is nothing but the law of conservation of energy. This is what is referred to as the loop law. Because we are going in a closed loop, we are calling it the loop law. This is the loop law. In a closed loop, the algebraic sum of the loss and potential and gain in potential is 0. When do you lose potential? When you go from positive to negative, you lose potential. In case of a battery, when do you lose potential? When you go from positive to negative, you lose potential. When do you gain potential? You gain potential when you go against the current. You gain potential when you go from negative to positive. So in a circuit, there are some places where we lose, there are some places where we gain. The net loss is equal to the net gain. These two rules, these two questions come very often in your board exam. If I give you a test, definitely this question will be there. What are Kirchhoff's laws? Explain Kirchhoff's laws. Okay, what are Kirchhoff's laws? Explain Kirchhoff's laws. So this is what is Kirchhoff's law. and this is the explanation for Kirchhoff's law. So according to the law 1, the current approaching a junction is equal to the current leaving a junction. So we have Kirchhoff's first law. This is also referred to as the junction rule. The fundamental theory behind this is the law of conservation of charge. Then what does it say? That if you have a loop, if you have a junction, the current, if this is I1, this is I2, this is I3. So I1 plus I2 is equal to I3. Current approaching a junction is equal to the current leaving the junction. That is Kirchhoff's first law. Okay. Then you have Kirchhoff's second law. What is Kirchhoff's second law? In a closed loop, the net gain in potential must be equal to the net loss of potential. You see, we got V2 is equal to this much, which I can further write V2 is equal to IR1 plus IR2 plus IR3 minus V1. So this is the gain in potential, this is the loss in potential, and the loss in potential and the gain in potential are equal. Okay, that is what is Kirchhoff's second law. Kirchhoff's second law is also referred to as the loop law. It is also referred to as the loop law, and it is coming from the law of conservation of energy. It is coming from the law of conservation of energy. Okay, do you understand it? So write some notes and then we will look at its applications. Write down your notes and then we will look at its applications. Why there are no messages today? I am not getting the messages, or you guys are not having any doubts? Okay, so if you guys understood these two, then let us move on and let us look at one application or two applications today. And then for the next 2-3 classes, we will only work with this. Okay, suppose I have a resistor like this called R1. I have another resistor here called R2. And I have another resistor here called R3. And I have a potential source. Okay, you ask me the question, what is the effective resistance? What is the effective resistance? So here, this is the current. This is the current which is moving. Yeah, how to the logic I have put? Current leaving a junction is equal to current entering a junction. Now some of you think, when current flows this way, will the current not reduce? Yes, if laddus go from in front of us, they will reduce, because the number of laddus coming in is not equal to the number of laddus going out, because there will be accumulation in our stomach. But here we are saying that whenever current flows, there is no accumulation. So if there is no accumulation, always current entering will be going to is equal to current going out. Please don't think that the current will reduce. Okay, current entering is equal to current going out. So in the first step, I drew all the current. Current always leaves the positive terminal. Current always leaves the positive terminal and enters negative terminal, and that current leaving is equal to current entering, because the battery doesn't create charges. The battery just enables the charges to move. It's just like a force. That's why battery is actually, that voltage is called the electromotive force. It just makes the current move in the circuit. So battery is a device which generates EMF, electromotive force. So that is, the charges move only because of the EMF. That is what the battery does. Okay, so here I have applied. Now I am going to apply the second law. What does the second law say? Loss in potential is equal to gain in potential. So here I am going to lose potential IR1. Here I am going to lose potential IR2. Here I am going to lose potential IR3, and that must be equal to the gain in potential here V, which we can also say as EMF E. This has an EMF E. So what can I say? This is equal to I R1 plus R2 plus R3. What is this? This is the effective resistance. What kind of a circuit is this? It's a series circuit. Did you notice that in a series circuit, the current through all the elements is the same? Current through all the elements is the same. Yeah, so this is a series circuit. Here you have a series circuit. In a series circuit, you have three. I have taken three resistors. They are connected one end to the other end. Okay, and they have connected to a battery, which is a source of EMF. What does EMF stand for? Electromotive force. What does it do? It is that force which is making the current move. It is that force which is making the current move. Now we know charge cannot be created nor destroyed. So all the currents must be the same. So when a current passes through a resistor, the current doesn't reduce. Its energy reduces. Its energy reduces, but the current doesn't reduce. Okay, so this is resistors in series. If you can make notes, we'll continue. Okay, so if you understand this, let me go to another circuit, which will make it look like this. So some current leaves here, same current must come here. Current is going this way. So now there are two routes for current. One route is like this and one route is like this. Suppose this is R1 and this is I1. Then the rest of it will go here. So I can say it is I minus I1. So I2 is going this side. Then I3 is going this side. This is R2. This is R3. Do you understand this? The current is getting distributed. Current is like a drain of water. You have multiple outlets. So some current, some water will go this way, some water will go straight, again it will go that way, again go straight. But the total water will be the same. So I is equal to I1 plus I2 plus I3. All the current, this current I is passing through this one, passing through this one, and passing through this one. So it's the same current, right? So the same current. So I should be equal to I1 plus I2 plus I3. Now, do you see that you have a closed loop here? So if this potential is V, for this closed loop, if I have to write equations, what can I say? I can say V, that is gain in potential, is equal to I1 R1, loss in potential. Similarly, you see the current is now going this way and it is coming this way. I have another loop here. So in this other loop, I can say V is equal to I2 R2. Similarly, if I have a third loop here, I will say V is equal to I3 R3. So from here I can find out I1, I2, I3, substitute here and get 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2 plus 1 by R3. Can you make notes? Hello? Yeah, can you make notes there? So I will teach you this again in the next class. I will teach you series parallel again tomorrow. Oh, I said I'm going to discuss the question paper. I keep forgetting. Okay, tomorrow I will discuss the question paper. Then again, we will look at series parallel on Monday and we will learn more things on Monday. Okay. I only hope you guys are reading at home and I also hope you are thinking at home. I hope chapter number 2 is over. I told you first June we will have exam, so I fixed up the dates of the exam. I think June 2nd week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. You will have the first you will have maths exam, then you will have physics exam, then you will have chemistry exam. Okay, so let's go back to the first slide. This is the first slide. This is the second slide. This is the third slide. This is the fourth slide. This is the fifth one. This is the sixth slide. Seventh one where I summarized what all we have read till now. Eighth one, we read about Kirchhoff's first law, also called the junction law, the fundamental theory behind it being the law of conservation of charge. I missed this. Then you have Kirchhoff's second law. Then I was trying to apply Kirchhoff's law to one circuit and then explain loop law to one circuit and explain. Then I was trying to summarize both of them. Junction rule based on law of conservation of charge. Then again you have the second law, which is called the loop law, is based on the law of conservation of energy. Then I explained to you what is EMF. EMF is the electromotive force. So EMF is basically what makes the charges to run from here to there. Then I explained to you series and then I explained to you parallel. When I explained to you parallel, I rushed it up because I said I will explain this in the next class.